And welcome to Nicola.
Hi. So my name is Nicola McKilligan Regan, and I'm a sort of odd one out in the panel because my background is really not in financial services regulation, but in privacy regulation. So I worked originally for the data privacy regulator in the UK back in the 90s, and I've been doing privacy law for about 20 years now, and that's all I've been doing. So I think I'm a bona fide privacy geek, actually. And over those 20 years, things have changed a lot. I mean, for the last sort of 10, 15 years, I've been self-employed, and we've run our own privacy consultancy, privacy partnership. So that's we're a small boutique. We like to say boutique consultancy. We offer advice on privacy law and consultancy to a wide range of businesses, including a lot of the major financial services companies as well. And we also have a technology arm, which is building privacy enhancing technology and technology to help people comply with the new privacy legislation that's coming. I guess, has everybody here heard of the General Data Protection Regulation? Yeah. So in 2018, there's this huge piece of legislation coming over the horizon, which is bringing these sort of money laundering sort of level fines for privacy for the first time, for data privacy. So for the first time in organisations, privacy is up there with the sort of AML compliance guys, and the fines are going to be between 2 and 4% of global annual turnover for data privacy breaches from 2018, or 100 million euros, whichever's the greater. So pretty hefty fines that are coming along. And in fact, Rob mentioned the Tesco Bank, and that sounds like a big disaster for Tesco, but a lot of people said Tesco had a lucky escape, because if it had happened in 2018, the fine would have been 1.9 billion under data privacy laws alone. And if you're in the financial services sector, compliance in this area is is doubly costly, because the FCA and the PRA do also they also take action in relation to privacy, and the FCA works with the regulator in the UK, the Information Commissioner, but they fine separately. So you could get fined twice if you're a financial services regulation after 2018, and they could be both very large fines. So we advise, and we advise across the board. We advise social media companies and technology companies, as well as the financial services sector. And I think, because I've come from a regulator's background many years ago, I would agree with everything that Jeff and Rob said about engaging with the regulators. Particularly when new legislation comes along, to the point the gentleman made earlier, because actually the regulators are often a bit on the back foot there as well. And they, new technologies, which you guys are developing, and also the new laws that are coming in, really, the regulators do actually need help with applying that themselves. And if you go early, if you take your ideas to them, you'll probably find you get sensible advice and actually put yourselves in a position, your business is in a position to get a better perspective going forward. So we take that sort of general approach with our clients. We try to give pragmatic advice, but we also try to help our clients engage with regulators too, because I think if you're developing new technologies in the startup space, then that is really, really very important, that you don't hide from the regulators because you're so scared of them, because you see these fines and you think, what I really don't want to do is let the regulators know about me. Now, sometimes flying below the radar can be helpful, but if you're going to be doing something which involves, for example, a lot of new use of privacy, personal information, and you know that you're doing something that is a bit on the edge, I think it's better to know what the laws are, understand, what risks you're taking, rather than to pretend they don't exist. And particularly dangerous, I think, is to build a new business or a new technology without looking at the risks at all. And I think privacy is one of those areas where people have in the past thought the fines aren't very high, because they used to be. I mean, the maximum fines have been pitiful. They've been things like £5,000, or for most small companies, and there've been bigger fines recently, which have been more significant, particularly in the financial services sector. But when you look at the huge hike in fines, I don't think you can afford to take the same risks as you did in the past. So any new product that involves the collection of personal information going forward, you've got to be really aware of those regulations and what to do about them. And all the big companies are already taking this seriously, and they're starting to prepare for 2018. And unfortunately, Brexit doesn't get you out of it either, because in the UK, we are still implementing the new General Data Protection Regulation, and in fact I think it's going to be worse, because if you look at countries which are outside the EU currently, they've got to do a lot more to prove that they can receive European personal data. That's live 5 minutes. You sure that's right? Yeah, so they've got to do a lot more, and I think actually the standards we'll have to meet and how much will be audited will increase if you want to continue doing business in Europe.
Excellent. So time for a quick question before we move on. Shout them out.
I'm curious of all those files. What happens if you get hacked against your will and they publish?
It doesn't make any difference. So they still fine you if you're hacked. I mean, the problem slightly with privacy regulators is they're not very technically savvy. So all the laws say about security is you have to have appropriate security, and they've typically interpreted that meaning as if you get hacked, you didn't have appropriate security. So I think there might be cases where you've done everything, where they might be lenient on you, but we haven't seen any of those yet. They've generally gone for you. You know, if you had been hacked. The trouble is, as you know, if you work in information security, is it's impossible to patch everything. So you do, as people said earlier, you do take a risk-based approach. And the trouble is the regulators say, well, you've taken the wrong risk then, haven't you, because you've been hacked. So I think there might be occasions where you've been subject to a very, a hack which is perhaps something you couldn't anticipate, but usually they're not, are they? They're existing known vulnerabilities. And if that's been exploited, unfortunately the regulator doesn't have much sympathy. And you have to report the breaches from 2018 as well.
Go for it.
Hello. What impact do you feel new technologies, so for example blockchain, will have on privacy law?
Yeah, blockchain is a good one. Should know more about blockchain. I did go to a nice presentation on blockchain recently. I think that the problem is with all new technologies, the risks don't often become apparent until they're in use. And even for regulators, it's very difficult to guess what those risks will be. With blockchain, I think because you're taking out more of the middle people, I think you might be taking it slightly out of the sight of the regulators, out of third parties who can check. But I'm not a huge blockchain expert, so I won't mention that. But I think generally with new technologies, it takes a while for them to bed in. And what's happening now with the regulation that's coming in is really that's trying to address problems that came up in technology 10 years ago. Regulation is always behind. So I think if problems come up with blockchain, which is only very new technology, they won't be sorted out by regulation probably for another 10 years.
Great, thanks. I'm afraid we're going to have to keep
Sorry,
moving, but
catch me later.
you can ask the questions later.